Hello friends, welcome to DBMS class. In this class, let us discuss what are the advantages and disadvantages of DBMS, and let us see when to use the DBM or when to not use the DBMS. Okay, so let us see the first one, that is advantages of database management system. So in the previous class we saw what is database and what is database management and what are the main characteristics of database management system and what are the functionalities of a database management system. So let us see what are the advantages of database management system and what capabilities in addition to the DBMS or what capabilities that good DBMS should possess. Okay, so see, the first advantage of the database management system is it must control the redundancy. So controlling the redundancy is one of the important and one of the main advantage of using a database management system. So as we know, in traditional software development, in traditional software that utilize the file processing to store the database. Okay, so in that case, every user or a group maintain its own file for handling the data or a data processing applications. So let us see one example for this. See, this is our example of university database. So this database contains the relation like student, course, section, grade report and prerequisites. So this is the database which is maintained university information using a or in the form of a computerized system. If in a traditional system, if they want to maintain the university database by using a file processing, in that case, let us take two examples that two groups of users who might be use this data to maintain some registration details or for registration detail for personal and for accounting office. What happens here? So if this database is maintained by using a file processing like by two groups, one group want to maintain the details for a personal use and another group want to maintain the details of a student for a accounting files. In this case, in traditional approach, each group is independently keeps the files of a students. Okay, so every group is going to keep a personal file for their use. Okay, so in this case, the accounting office keeps the data on registration and related billing information. Okay, and whereas registration keeps a track of a student course and grades. Okay, and other different groups may keep a duplicate or a same data or all the same data in their own files in this what we need to here understand, if you use a traditional file system, in that case every group must create their own file or their own file in which they use the same in which they store the same data. So this is called as a redundancy. So redundancy means the redundancy in storing the same data multiple times. So that is called as a redundancy. And what happens if redundancy is there in a database? So it leads to several problems. So first, when they need to perform a update operation on the data. So logical approach such as entering the data on the new students. In that case, at every file they need to update the new student information in each file. So in this case, it takes a lot of time for updating the new student information in every file. Okay, or so once for each file where student data is recorded, so this leads to the duplication of efforts. So this is called as this is a one of the problem of redundancy that caused by the redundancy. And second one is the storage space is wasted. As we know, so there is the same data is stored in a multiple places or in a multiple times. So that causes the wastage of memory. And third one is the inconsistency, because file that represent the same data that may lead to the inconsistency, because an update is applied to some files but not to the others. So if I want to update the student database, if I want to update the new database to the one file, that must not reflect in the another file for the account use. So this is called as a inconsistency. So these are some examples, some problems which are caused by the redundancy. So to overcome all these, we can use the database. So by using the database, we can reduce the or we can control the redundancy. So in database management system, the redundancy can be reduced by the using one technique that is called as a data normalization. So by doing data normalization on the database, it ensures the consistency and saves the storage space. So in upcoming chapters, we will see what is normalization and the types of normalization. But in practice, it is necessary to use the control redundancy to improve the performance and queries. Okay, so let us see one example. See, in this grade report file, so here we are storing a student name and course name redundantly. See here, this is a Smith, okay, and course number. So course number is here and student number, okay. So all data are in a multiple times, okay. So here, what is the use of this redundant data? See here, so whenever we retrieve the grade report record, so I want to retrieve the grade report record, okay. So we want to retrieve the student name. What we need here? We need student name, course number, along with the grades. So this is a grade of a particular student obtained for a particular course, okay. And after that, what we need? We need a student number and section identifier. So by placing all the data together, we do not have to search a multiple files. So either one file in ನೀವು access ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಿಮಗೆ ಏನು ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ, we will get a grade report of a particular student along with their student number and name, section identifier, course and obtained grade. So this is called as a denormalization. In such cases, DBMS should have the capabilities to control this redundancy in order to prohibit the inconsistency, okay, so among the files. So this may done by automatically checking the student name, student number, values in any grade reports. So see, so as I told, DBMS should have the capabilities to control the redundancy because to prohibit the inconsistency among the files. So this may be done by automatically by checking the student name, student number and values in the grade report. So see this table. So in this table, match one of the student match the name of a student and student number and values in the grade report. So these values can be checked against the section records which is present in a database. Okay, see here. So this is a section. Instead of storing a redundant data in a particular file, here we are making a one section. So in this section, we can match a student name. So see, so this is a student details and this is a course detail and this is a section details and this is a grade report. So here in the grade report, there are two fields are there. Those are section number and section identifier and grade. Okay. So in this case, a grade report can be checked against the section records. So such checks can be specified to the DBMS during the database design or and automatically enforced by the grade report record. So that is inconsistency with the student file as I shown you in the previous slide. So next one is a restricting unauthorized access. Okay. So see here, when multiple users share a large database, so that is likely to most users will not be authorized to access the information in the database. Okay. So some of our users cannot access the some information which is stored in the database. So for example, financial data that is often considered confidentially. We know about this, and authorized persons are allowed to access such data. Okay. So if there is a university database, in that case, some confidential data cannot be accessed by the students. Only authorized people of the university only can access that data. So such authorization must be provided by the DBMS. So that is the main advantage of the restricting the unauthorized access for the data which is stored in the database. So, and as we know, a DBMS should provide a security and authorization subsystem. Okay, so which a that means database administrator uses to create the accounts and to specify the account restrictions. Then DBMS should enforce these restrictions automatically. Okay, so that means this is the unauthorized people must not access the data. So see, when the database can be used and provided persistent storage for program objects and structures. Okay, one program objects ಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ data structures ಗೆ ನಾವು ಯಾವಾಗ ಒಂದು database ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವೋ, So that is the one of the main reason for object oriented database system. Okay. So in program, there are so many programming languages that may use some complex data structures such as C, Pascal, C++, and Java. Okay. The values of these program variables or objects are discarded once the program terminates or once we stop execution of the programs, unless the programmer explicitly stores the files in the permanent storage devices. Okay. So when you stop the execution of the programs, values stored in the variables are going to be erased. So that's why in that case the programmer must store the values or must store the files in a secondary storage devices for a permanent use. Okay. So in this case object oriented database systems are compatible with the programming languages like C, C++, Java, and DBMS software automatically performs the necessary conversions which we want to store the data permanently on the secondary storage devices. We need not to use any other application or any other we need not to create we need not to use any other separate code for storing the data permanently on the storage devices. So this is called as a providing a persistent storage for the program objects. And next advantage of providing the storage structures and search techniques for efficient query processing. Okay. So when we store the large amount of data stored in the data, we can store the large amount of data in the database management system. We know about this. Okay. So the main advantage of the database, it is going to provide a one systematic or some different types of techniques to access the or to retrieve the data stored on the database, like a indexing technique. So we use that indexing technique. So let us take one example for this. We have a let us take a, for example, so our textbook. So in our textbook, if you want to refer a particular chapter, what we are going to first see, we are going to check a first index. So if in that index we are going to find out chapter name, after that we will find a page number. So according to that page number, directly we can move that particular page number, we can read the particular chapter. In the same way, by using the index technique, we can access or we can retrieve the particular record stored on a database instead of sequentially moving a record from one row to another. So in this way, DBMS is going to provide an efficient search technique and storage technique for query processing. Query processing means retrieving the or manipulating the data stored in the database by using some query languages, that is called as a query processing. And DBMS also provides some buffering and caching. So buffering means it maintains so DBMS often has a buffering or a caching module. So these module maintains the parts of the database in the main memory. Okay. So the data which is stored in the main memory, so that can be easily accessed or easily within a short time we can retrieve the data stored in the database. And then the next advantage which is provided by the DBMS is it provides a backup and recovery. Okay. So as we know, a DBMS must provide the facility for recovering the data from hardware or software failures. Okay. So this is again main advantage of the database management system. And the next advantage is it must provide a multiple user interface. Okay. So because many types of users with varying levels of technical knowledge use the database, as we know about this. And in this case, DBMS should provide a varieties of user interfaces. Okay, it may include query languages for casual users. Okay, and the programming language interface for application programmers, and forms and command modes for a parametric users, and menu driven system for a natural language interface for a standalone users, and both form style interface and menu driven interface for a menu driven interface like a GUI, that is graphical user interface, that must be provided to the standalone user. So in this case, so many specialized languages and environments exist for specifying a GUIs. Okay, that is graphical user interface. So this DBMS provides different types of interfaces for multiple types of users for or different types of end users. So next advantage is enforcing the integrity constraint. So let us see what do you mean by integrity constraint. So constraint means applying some or specifying some rules on the database is called as a constraint. So this is the main advantage of using a database. So so as we know, so the next advantage is enforcing the integrity constraint. So most of our DBMS application or a database applications have certain integrity constraints. Those must be held by our data. Okay, and in this case, DBMS should provide capabilities for defining and enforcing these integrity constraints. And the simplest type of integrity constraints that is involves that is specifying the data type of each data items. Every data item ಗೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಡೇಟಾ ಟೈಪ್ ನ ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡೋದ್ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ನಾವೇನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ನ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. Then how the what you mean by data type? So data type means data type means it specify the type of the value being stored in the field. Okay, so in this way by specifying the type for the item, we can apply the integrity or apply the integrity constraints on the database. Let us say take for example. So in this case here class is the field, okay, so of our entity student. So class record must be a one digit integer and that values of a class must be in between 1 to 5. Okay, there are only 5 semester. In this case a class value must be within 1 to 5. This is again one constraint. And let us take this one. So name is a field of a student, entity student. In this case this field must contains the character from 1 to 30. So the values of this attribute must not exceed above 30 character. This is again one constraint. Okay, in this way we can specify the constraints on the field. Again there are so many types of constraints are there, like a unique key constraints. That means every section identify. So here every section identifier number must be unique. That is called as a unique key constraint. And here course number. So every course has a unique identity number. Okay. So in this case every course must have a unique number or a specific unique number, that is called as a unique key constraint. So in this way we can maintain the integrity constraints and a key constraint or a unique key constraints on the database. By applying these constraints on the database, we can reduce the redundancy also. So this is the advantage of using the DBMS. So as I told, data security means DBMS provide the security to the data stored in the database, because it restricts the unauthorized access, or unauthorized people cannot access the data stored on the database. And next one is improved data access. As I told, this is same for the these statements. So by using index structures or some other techniques, search techniques, we can access the data stored on the database. So let us see what are the disadvantages of DBMS. If there are advantages, then there must be a disadvantage. There may be a disadvantages of using the database. Okay. So as we saw, there were many advantages of DBMS. And again there are also some disadvantages of using a database management system. See what are the disadvantages of DBMS, using the DBMS. So first one is increased cost. So let us see how there is a increase in the cost. First one, cost of hardware and software. So this is a first disadvantage of the DBMS, because it is a mandatory to user or to have a high speed processor and also a large memory space. So if we want a high speed processor and large memory space, we need to pay large amount of money. So this is a cost. This takes a lots of money. And next one, cost of staff training. What we need to administrate the database, we need a educated staff for database administration also, and for application program also, and for data entry operations. So it takes a lot of money, money investment. So this is one of the disadvantage of using a database management system. And next one is complexity. So as we know, nowadays all companies are using the database management system to fulfill the lots of requirement and also solve the problems. But a problem arises, that is all these functionalities had been database management system, extremely complex structures. Let us take one example like Flipkarts. It stores huge amount of data. So think what is the complexity behind the database, or what is the complexity in the backend. Okay, so there is a loss. There is a extremely complex structures, and in this case for a proper requirement of a DBMS, it is a very important to have a good knowledge of it for the developers, DBA and designers, and also for the end users. So this is because if any one of them do not require a proper or a complete skills, then this may leads to a storage of or this may leads to a data loss or a database failure because of complexity. So this is the main disadvantage of a DBMS. And next one is currency. Next one is a currency maintenance. So this is very necessary to keep your system current because efficiency, which is one of the biggest factor and need to the overlook, must be maximized. Okay. So nowadays a day to day technology is improving. So on the basis of that, we must maintain our system accurate. And next one is a performance. As we know, a traditional file system is written for small organization and for specific application. So due to which a performance is generally very good. But for small scale frames, DBMS does not give a good performance. Okay, and its speed is very low. So as a result, some application will not run as fast as they could. So hence it is not good to use a DBMS for small frames or for small applications. So this is one of a disadvantage of using a DBMS for small applications. Next one, frequency upgrade and replacement cycles. So nowadays in this world we need to stay up to date, as I told, because technology is changing day by day. So we need to upgrade, we need to use upgraded versions of the software to better use of or better performance of the DBMS. But in some cases it becomes some difficulties to work with a system because it is not easy to learn how the command, what are the new commands and understand again it when new updates are done. So this is the main disadvantage of using a DBMS. So when damage happens to the database or to the hardware, in that case it may affect virtually to the applications of another programs which are installed on the systems. So this is again disadvantages of database. And again next disadvantage of using a database management system, that is initial training is required for all the programs and users. So if there is a one database, to you implement or to maintain that database, and to use that database, both the programmers and users must be trained. Okay, if they are not well trained, there may be a misuse of the database, or there may be a loss of data stored on the database. And so next one is when to not use database. So we learned what are the advantages and disadvantages of database management. There are few situations in which instead of using a DBMS, we can use a traditional file system. To reduce the overhead cost of using a DBMS, due to the following reasons: because it needs a high initial investments in a hardware and a software and training. So we need to pay more money for hardware, software and training. And it generally, and the generality that DBMS provides defining and processing the data. So data na define ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಮತ್ತೆ processing ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, it takes a lot of time. So in that case we can use a traditional file system instead of a DBMS. Okay, and to DBMS creates a overhead for providing the security, concurrency control, recovery and integrity functions. When we don't need a security and concurrency control, and when we don't need a recovery and integrity functions, in that case instead of using a DBMS we can use a traditional file system. So therefore it may more desirable to use regular files under the following systems or following circumstances, like when our databases or when our data is very simple and well defined database applications that do not need a expected change many times. When we don't need a regularly change the data stored on the database, in that case we can use the traditional file system. If our database is very simple and very small, in that case instead of using the database management system, we can use again a traditional file system to maintain the small amount of data. So in this case we can use a DBMS. Instead of using a DBMS, we can use a traditional file processing system. So again, this is one of the important concept in database management system, and for your examination, so these questions will be asked. These questions will be asked for your examination, like explain the advantages and disadvantages of a database management system or use of database management system for 5 or 10 marks. And again, there may be questions like when to not use, explain when to not use the DBMS. So for 5 marks, in this case you have to explain all the advantages, disadvantages, and what are when to not use the DBMS with the example. So if you have any doubts, you can ask. Thank you.